Hey guys, it's Jessica Stone at Stansberry Research, and I've got Rosemary Coates, who runs the Reshoring Institute out of California, here with me today. We're talking about the conversation, or really lack of conversation, around a U.S. industrial policy. Rosemary, why don't we start by talking about what is an industrial policy?
Yeah, well, by and large, other countries have some sort of support for their industries that they feel are strategic or very important to the country's well-being and operation. In the U.S., we've been sort of afraid of doing this for a while because it forces the government to pick and choose winners and losers.
We are seeing a conversation, especially around pharmaceuticals, because we're in this vaccine and drug race to treat the coronavirus. Is is that where you think this conversation likely would start in terms of U.S. policy?
Yes, I think so. It's one thing to talk about PPE because a lot of that are sewn products or a more simple kind of manufacturing and approach, which can be done fairly easily here and perhaps better suited for foreign locations where the costs are cheaper. But when it comes to pharmaceuticals, we're very vulnerable. A lot of the building blocks are made in China. Building blocks of those chemicals or the pharmaceuticals are manufactured in bulk in China. And that puts us at a disadvantage. I mean, if the trade war continues, and China decides to withhold some of those exports to us, well, we're in a very bad situation.
Yeah, I
And
think
then,
the
of
number
course,
is 72% of our active pharmaceutical ingredients come from outside the country, and in particular from China. So um, there's definitely the possibility of a stranglehold. You mentioned earlier that typically our country hasn't been interested in doing this because we want the market to decide. What makes you think that Americans and American voters are ready to change their minds about that?
I think over the past few years with the trade war and a lot of the rhetoric coming from government regarding China, that China is bad or is in some way controlling our procurement of items and so forth, that has put a mood, I think, in consumers in America to move towards items that are actually made in the USA. I think there's a preference for that. In fact, at the Reshoring Institute, we just finished a survey of about 500 people all across America and asked them if they preferred products that are made in the USA, and an overwhelming majority said yes, and they're willing to pay more for it, up to 20% more. Moving some of those products into production in the US is going to take years. We're not going to be able to build an electronics industry based on small component parts overnight, if ever. So it's quite possible some of that will never come back. You have to think about products coming back to be reshored or to be developed here. And quite frankly, we don't want 100% of the jobs back. An awful lot of them don't pay a living wage. They're small, assembly jobs, or they just don't require any skill level, and therefore they just don't pay a living wage. And then we have to supplement people's income with welfare. We don't want that, right? So what we want to come back are the better paying jobs that do pay a living wage, that are squarely middle class jobs. So, looking across industry, that means that some things like small assembly work and for electronics, or sewing factories, or these kind of low skilled, low paid jobs are not really good for us.
What do we know about both parties' platforms with respect to industrial policy, and would it be possible to do it in a uniquely American way? That is to say, not just picking winners and losers, but incentivizing them through, let's say, tax breaks and subsidies, which is something we do with corn and ethanol already.
I mean, we really need to look at the kinds of jobs that we want to go forward, and then build policy around that, whether it's a tax incentive, or it's making property available, or it's a buy American implementation, for government purchases, which we kind of already have, but enforcing it to a higher extent for government
Yeah, I mean,
purchases that must
that
be.
makes me wonder if we sort of have some of the building blocks with the subsidies and the tax breaks we're giving to other industries. Do we already have the tools in our toolkit to come up with the U.S. industrial
Yeah,
policy? We just need to sort of bring everything together, coalesce it around the industries we want to support.
exactly.
This doesn't seem like a hard sell under a Trump administration. Do you have any sense of why we haven't gotten closer to that?
Yeah, I think it's pretty typical, whether it's Trump or it's Obama or anybody else. There's a lot of talk and discussion and not so much implementation. So when you pull back the covers, there isn't anything there, right? So I think it's just simply a policy of that's lacking in execution. And that's why it's important to have this discussion now, because it's a hot button for everybody. I mean, we're all part of this pandemic, and we can all see the importance of having pharmaceuticals made here, and now hopefully attaching to that other things.
All right, Rosemary Coates, I'm going to have to leave it there, but it's always a pleasure to talk to you, the executive director and chairman of the board of the Reshoring Institute. Thanks for your time. And if you would like to see much more content just like this, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can find us on LinkedIn, on Twitter, and on Facebook. Thanks so much for watching. That's all for now.